light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary, who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Abogo and Tay Kofi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Abogo. And tonight, yes, I do have my incredible co-host, the man with the voice and the bow tie, Tay Kofi.
First the voice, now the bow tie as well.
Yeah.
Hello. You're looking gorgeous.
Thank you.
I had to take pictures of you putting on that lipstick. It is just absolutely awesome. What colour is that? Is that purple or blue?
It's a purpley blue inky thin. It's really nice.
Awesome. Lovely stuff. Yeah. Nicoletta's salivating on the other side as well.
Yeah, I thought, it's spring, the spring,
New feel.
Exactly.
New season, new feel.
Exactly.
Yeah,
spring 17, we're bringing out new thins. So I thought, hey, why not try something new? So this is why this
By the way, you sound gorgeous. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Oh. What more could I ask?
I can hear you. You always sound great anyway, which basically is the envy of most people because you have that voice that just does things to people.
Oh, Lily, you can come anytime. I'll take that in writing later on, of course. So yeah, no, we got quite a subject on tonight, haven't we?
Yep. We are talking about the black man, gender stereotypes, the narrow confines of black masculinity, what it is and isn't. And, basically, we're going to delve deep into the black man. And yes, as a black woman, black men here, oh, she's talking about us. It means something we've done wrong. So let's start this off this way. I'm not saying the black men have done anything wrong or have not. We're just examining and asking the questions. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you're a black man.
Rumor has it.
Rumor has it that you're a black man.
And I can guarantee it's true.
So when we start talking about the black man, there is something about how the black man is defined. He is, it seems to be a very narrow window. If it's not in that confines of being the thug, being the hard guy, being, as a friend quoted once, the bedroom bully, being the hit it, the quit it, being the, the stoic, quiet, emotionless creature, then anything else he's acting like a female. And I think it's only within our community that we've somehow coined the phrase female to sound like it's something derogatory. You're acting like a female. You're not a man, you're a female. You are the B word and you are this and that. And you can see it playing out in the stereotypes on stage across the world. So you name any rap artist, the hyper masculine, it shows up. It shows up as a black man is not cultured. If he's cultured, he's a nerd and a geek, and no woman wants him apparently. Apparently, all black women want the thug niggers. Yeah. Did I just say that?
Yes, you did.
I just said
it's
that.
It's a pass. No, that's all right. I'll allow it. For dramatic impact. Only
because we don't use the N-word here.
Absolutely.
But, so let's talk about it. You being the black man, so you have the experience. What is it like to be a black man in the Western society?
Can I say that when we decided to do this, I looked at the page on the message. I was really thrilled.
Okay.
Because the question you just asked me, nobody ever asks me that question. That's the first thing.
Right.
You got to know that nobody ever asks this question. It's because the experience of male negritude is something which is usually censored from speech. I don't know why. I can only speculate because I don't censor it from speech. I'm happy to talk about it till the cows come home. But usually this is something which is censored from speech. And so there is so much to tell, but we're going to try and truncate it. The first thing, the very, very, very first thing I'd say is that it is full of false stereotypes and false narratives.
Yep.
Because I am one. And the long and short of it is that a black male is no different, I imagine, to any other male, except for the constructs that society, the boxes that society, certainly in the West, would like to put us in. And when you try and squeeze something into a mold or a box that doesn't fit that thing, you are set up for conflict. So I think that on the baseline, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just a regular, normal, everyday, common or garden human being. But society would like to paint a picture of me which isn't like that. And that's where the false stereotypes come in, and that's where the censorship comes in, when I'm trying to tell them that, excuse me, that's not me. You're talking about somebody else. So, yeah.
You say that, and and I appreciate, because I appreciate your standpoint, because I'm gonna circle back to something that you just said about, it's a construct of the West of how, the Black masculinity shows up. But is it really? Because at the same time, we are actually very guilty of taking that box and beating men over the head with. I mean, I remember I was out in the Cayman Island. No, sorry, not the Cayman Island. In Curacao at a workshop in 2015. And at the front of the room, an elder stood up and asked a question. And she goes, as a mother, grandmother, I've been told not to hug my grandson so much because it will make him gay. I was like, wow. So she goes, what do I suggest to that? I go, well, that's your grandson. She goes, yes. I go, your daughter's or son's child? She says, yes. I go, well, here's the thing. Hug your grandson. Hug him every day that you can. Because the fact is, and I'm using this royal we, are very guilty of trying to define the Black masculinity as something that it isn't, and invariably raise emotionally stunted men.
But that's curious, because that's a Western phenomenon. That is when Black men are raised in a situation in which they are a minority, and you can't take that situation without understanding the history that's gone before. I was essentially raised in a situation in which I was the majority, and also quite a privileged majority. In fact, when I was a baby, if anything, I was too loved up. Certainly the people who were my carers loved me so much that you grow up with a sense of your worth as a human being. And the curious thing is that the greater your sense of worth, the more obnoxious doing certain things become. They become doing anything that contradicts your worth as a human being becomes completely anathemic to your existence. Now, I think that it is the influence of slavery which has caused a lot of these stereotypes to be created in the West. I mean, I never had to work like a dog for anybody. Never, ever. And I never had to think about where my next beating was going to come from. And I actually expected that by a certain age in life, I would be in a certain situation. This is completely unknown in the West.
Right. Okay, so I get where you're coming from. And you know what? Let's put it out there. You are privileged to be that loved. You are privileged as a Black man to experience that going through your entire childhood. But we are looking at the masses here. There are a lot of Black men that basically from the age of 13 to 21, they don't experience emotional touch.
Yeah.
We are absolutely raising emotionally stunted pygmies.
Well,
and then we ask as women, when we have, stunted their emotional growth, and then ask, why are they not emotional? Why don't they have any emotions? Why do they act like that?
Again, you see, I mean, my only explanation is because I've got a basis. I've got a framework of reference which is completely different to that. For me, that is a completely weird way of being raised. However, here in the West, and certainly in America and other places where Black people form the minority, they have to respond to in my opinion, they have to respond to a situation of white privilege. And what white privilege basically does is that it tries to explain to black people that they are second-class citizens, and in subtle but absolutely undeniable ways. Now, how black folk respond to this is the issue. I suspect that mothers are worried that, knowing the environment that their kids are going to grow up in, they can't afford for them to be weak. But that environment is not normal, because they know the environment won't be treating them the same way as it treats other people.
Right.
And so for that reason, I would imagine that would be one reason why, if you want your son to survive, you would adopt a strategy which, in your opinion, might toughen him up at the price of making him emotionally stunted and cold. But he'll be alive. He'll be alive, just emotionally stunted and cold.
So basically an emotional pygmy, but he's alive on the stoic black man thing. He's hard, never showing any emotion.
Absolutely. I mean, I would suspect that would be the reason why those things happen.
Well, okay, so let's play devil's advocate now.
Go ahead.
It's been a while since slavery. This is not slavery denial. Slavery happened.
Mm-hmm.
It devastated us as a people.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
What's the excuse?
I don't think there is an excuse. Slavery's been gone as a technicality for a long time, but right after emancipation, something happened called the 13th Amendment. And what the 13th Amendment basically did was it said that every person who was a slave is free unless they either commit a crime or have no work, vagrancy. So emancipation was given on the one hand and taken away by the other. And this was the beginning of the establishment of the prison industrial complex, which not only very quickly put freed slaves back into slavery, but it also had the extraordinary impact of disenfranchising lots of them. Because once you had a criminal record, you would lose your vote. Once you lose your vote, you lose your political participation. So even though slavery has gone off the statute books, in actual fact, the systems of exclusion continue to this very day. They're just more civilized, more subtle.
Okay, so you know what? And I am not taking that away from anybody. I'm not taking away that as being the reality, but that's the United States. And let's bring this closer to home, because let's look at
Are we talking about the United Kingdom now?
Let's look at what's going on in the United Kingdom and what's the excuse. I mean, the fact is, let's look at what is the issue with black men.
Okay, I'll tell you. It's really simple. To understand white privilege, you've really got to keep your eyes open, because white privilege won't come and smack you in the face and say, psst, by the way, I am white privilege. It is by a number of subterfuges, the first of which is censorship of speech. If black folk, black men, were able to share their experience openly on the media, the myth of white privilege would be busted in a nanosecond. Nobody talks. Nobody talks about what it's really like. So actually, the average, I would say, white person has no conception of the ways in which black people are excluded. But the statistics in the society don't lie. For example, black graduates earn 17% less than white graduates. Right. They are less likely to be employed within 6 months of leaving college. When they are employed and they join organizations, you will find that they end up on the slow track. They never fast track for progression. So actually, the models, the role models, the examples, the stereotypes of success aren't created. But then every now and again, you get a Trevor McDonald, or you get the Labour minister who's black. Now you got Tory ministers who are black. Now, what makes that extraordinary is the fact that actually they're almost like the carrot that you will never ever get. It is a complete fantasy to think. It is a total fantasy to think that these things are happening.
Say, you know what? We can point the finger to the cows come home and talk about what white media is not doing or is doing. We can point the fingers to the cows come home to what white privilege is doing or not doing. But let's also, the thing about pointing fingers is that some actually point back in our direction. So let's bring it closer to home because, yes, white privilege exists. It happens on a day-to-day basis. We will all experience it in one form, shape, or another. But however, we, again, I'm going to use this royal we, perpetrate these heinous crimes against each other in the sense of we are the ones that define we take on these stereotypes and then use them. We take on these stereotypes and then apply them. We then, I as a black woman will see a bunch of black boys standing in the corner and I'll clutch my bag a little tighter. I am very ashamed of that. I've done, and I'll go, wait, what? I don't know these kids. I don't know what they're doing or why they're standing there, but I have done this. So let's also look at what we, royal we, are doing. How are we raising our sons? How are we raising our daughters? And one of the things that we need to stop doing is raising our men like monsters. Because when we start, this is how mothers do it. Oh, that boy over there, that little black boy, he's going to do X, Y, and Z. Pull your skirt down, pull your skirts up, close your legs. Don't do this to him.
Well, that's interesting.
Don't irate him because he could lose control. So are we raising men? Are we raising monsters who are incapable of managing themselves?
It depends who we is, because the person you're talking about, I don't recognize.
Yeah, but that is the image. That is the image of what the black man looks like. That is the stereotypical image of the black man.
Okay. See, I think there are two issues here. There's one of taking appropriate responsibility, and there's one of taking inappropriate responsibility. And this narrative that you're talking about now, I would say, is a narrative that is enabled and put out by the establishment to absolve of itself of the responsibility for taking on board a systemic system which absolutely rigs the game in society. Now, that doesn't mean that black folk mustn't take a look and take responsibility for what they're doing, but I would say that it takes a long time for people to get what they're about. I used to say what you're saying years ago, but that's because by the time my father was 39, he was the head of the foreign service of his country. Okay? He had a terrific university education. His mates make decisions. When my elder sisters were looking for jobs, he could pick up the telephone and ring around and say, hey, look, she's just coming out of university now. Can you give her, what do you suggest? And so on and so forth. They were part of the networks. Now, here you are, we're in a situation in which none of those networks are available. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is crucial, is that there is a massively differential experience of living in Europe between black men and black women, because for some reason, the society experiences the black man as a greater threat. So me and you could be sitting in an environment with a whole bunch of people. Okay, we're sitting in the same room. But in actual fact, there might as well be two rooms, one room for you and one room for me, based on the perceived threat that you represent. And actually, how this pans out is that it kind of fulfills a prophecy that black men can't cope, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's that the glass ceiling for black men is infinitely lower than the glass ceiling for black women, including when they go off and have babies and come back. Now, that doesn't happen.
No. I will have to, I'm sorry, I will have to disagree on this one.
Oh, go ahead.
I will have to disagree on this one because I do believe that, yes, a black man is seen in a more threatening light, but however, the glass ceiling issue, I would have to disagree because I've worked in mainly male-dominated industries for my day job. So I do know that it's not as cut and dry or black and white in that scenario. But you know what? I think we'll park that one and revisit it because what I want us to actually look at, you a couple of things you segue into about, we're still going to go back to this. White privilege exists. I mean, even how the news is reported when somebody goes on a crime spree. White boy walks into the church, kills 4 people, and it's a lone, depressed young white boy. A black man kills somebody else. He's a terrorist. So the language I agree, the language we use is actually different. However, that's not the be all and end all, because why are we so quick to adopt these stereotypes?
Well, now on that score, I have to agree with you in that it's almost as if you give a dog a bad name, it'll respond to that nomenclature, and it is almost, as far as I'm concerned, almost indefensible. It is almost indefensible. But before I judge those people, I consider the differences between them and I. It is not going to happen that I'm going to be like that. And this is an accident of geography and history. I'm a public school educated black guy. I don't know what the inside of a comprehensive school looks like. I have never been in public education in my life. Everything I've been exposed to points me in a certain direction. Now, how many of my fellows in the United Kingdom have had those kind of opportunities and those kind of privileges?
And again, I say you've been privileged and very blessed. However, that is not the standard. That is the anomaly, and that's the problem. But you know what? We've been having a lot of input today because I think this topic is touching a couple of points. So let's look at what we've had come in on Instagram. I think that's where we start. So we have Udalissa goes, muscles you're earning, nor your being active in bed does not determine you being a man. Being a man is determined by the gender reflection of your personality. All this stereotypes has to do with is what people want. Our choices as humans, but not the definition of one's of gender. So, there are people actually saying that, it's construct. We all know it's constructed, the idea of masculinity, but it seems like when the construct comes down to black masculinity, the lane is even narrower for the black man because, white men have different avenues, especially, and then if you have, I think a friend of mine once said that even a gay black man had more room for human expression than a regular black man. It seems like a black man's emotion is neither wanted or required.
By who?
By all. Okay. He said.
Does that give you an answer to the question that you're asking? Does that suggest to you that actually it is a superhuman feat for that person against all the odds to fight against this? By the way, let me say, where I come from, you don't have babies until you're married or in a long-established, long-term, in fact, no, let's just say married with anybody. 1, 2. You don't go around having babies with every Jane, Mary, and Janet that you come across.
But isn't
Excuse me. Yeah. Number 3, you don't measure the worth of a man by the size of his car. You measure it principally by the quality of his education. Now, as far as I'm concerned, these are actually perfectly normal and sound values.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to come back to this because
Yes.
I agree with those values. I grew up with those values. I was actually very fortunate not to grow up here. However, most of us have. And like you
Most
said,
of us have what?
have most of, I'm going to use, and when I say
You mean
most,
grown up here?
yeah, when
Okay.
I'm using that, most of, again,
Yeah.
is the royal affair here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the black man who had to navigate growing up in this country, who had to navigate growing up black in Europe, who had to navigate growing up black in the United
Okay, I'll
States.
give you can I give you an
No,
example?
no.
Okay.
I'm not done yet.
So,
Let me land. Because when we think about it, that's what they know. So let's use certain a family. Granddad has 3 or 4 different partners, 9 or 4 different kids. You know, the story continues.
you're done. Like, where I come from, you do that, you're done already.
Then kids grow up
Yes.
going, okay,
This is
have a
okay.
baby here, have a baby there,
It's perfectly fine.
have a baby mama over there, have a baby mama over here.
But there is also something else going on there, which it is very interesting that women often overlook. There is something called gender socialization. Men in almost every culture are expected to provide, to lead, and so on. Now, I'm not supporting sexism here, and what usually happens is that the moment a man's ability to lead, earn money, and it's a lot to do with his economic status, the moment that goes wrong, most men become pathological. And it'll happen to any man. It doesn't matter where you come from. And you can see it in Trump's America, because all of a sudden people who were privileged and were used to having a steady income suddenly discovered that other groups were competing for that income. They weren't getting their privileges anymore, and they were prepared to do listen and try the most crazy things to retain that position of authority and control. Men who need to chase around after lots of women are men who, by their actions, demonstrate that they have a flawed masculinity, a totally flawed notion of their masculinity.
And we come back to the root of the cause. So is the problem that the idea of what makes up black masculinity inherently flawed?
No, of course it doesn't. It's the environment that makes that happen. Because if you could create Asian man, white man, any other kind of man into that situation, their behavior will follow exactly that type. Without a doubt, all men. See, what a man's got in his trousers is the last refuge of the failed individual. It is the only thing that defines their masculinity when they have nothing else.
So I think we're saying the same things, but from different angles. And my thing is that the notion of masculinity, or how it's been played out, because with men of other races,
yes.
They have more leeway. It's almost acceptable to say.
No, they haven't. They just have more privileges. They have more money. This is not.
This has
I
nothing
completely.
to do. No.
I disagree.
I personally disagree because
Yeah.
when it's you watch movies. Let's see. Let's what's his name now from The Notebook? Nicoletta? Ryan Gosling from The Notebook. He cries. It's all endearing and touching. That's all so beautiful. He's in The Notebook, makes heart flutter. Black man crying on TV, and we're like, he's
Excuse
such
me,
a
but
girl.
who is writing? Who is right? You see, I'm afraid that you have bought a narrative that has been normalized and created as a stereotype of black men, and you are using that narrative to beat them up.
No, actually, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is questioning it.
Yeah.
Because the fact is, we see a black man in tears, and I'm using we. I'm not using me. I'm using the royal we here of the masses out there of people who just how they've been socialized to see the narrative finds a man is strong. He's this. He's quiet. He's this. Those. Yeah, literally a barbarian with a phone. A barbarian with a phone and a penis.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
Those people see a black man in tears and he is a female. He's acting like a girl. He's this, he's that. So for me, a black man that can cry, a black man that can admit to having a level of emotion, pain, and hurt is a whole being, the same way that I am a being.
I'll tell you something. Do you want to... my eldest was really ill. She got an infection shortly after birth, and we had to go to Great Ormond Street. Do you want to see a grown man cry? That was me. My baby was really in pain. Really, really, really in pain. I don't remember the last time I'd done that. It's a completely natural and human response for a person who has any sense of care about. Of course, you don't do that in front of the child to freak them out. But those who were close to me could see how appalling this experience was. And it's the most natural thing in the world.
And Tate, I agree with you.
Yeah.
We are saying the same thing. At no point am I saying that a man is not allowed to cry. At no point am I saying a man is not allowed to feel pain. At no point am I saying that a man is not allowed to put his hand up and say, I have had it up to my eyeballs. I need to speak to someone or else. At no point am I saying that black men are somehow exempt from having emotional issues. And because there have been the underlining or the unspoken rule of black men not having that avenue, we are having an epidemic of black male suicide. You want to know what actually is the fastest killer of young black men right now across the world? It's not gun violence as we think. It's not unemployment. It's not even HIV. It's actually self-inflicted death.
Okay, well, let me tell you, when that sort of pathology, social pathology happens, it's not genetic. That situation is not, it's not something that they're born with. That is the response of an individual to an intolerable situation which everybody denies. And what usually happens is they say, oh God, isn't that terrible? Society, this is society's attitude now. Oh my God, isn't it terrible? And so on and so forth. And then refuses to talk about the conditions which led up to that situation. And in so doing, by being able to blame the situation, that by being able to speak about the responsibility those people had for it, and completely unprepared to consider the part they have in it, they lose their moral authority to even discuss the subject.
Okay, you know, I get where you're going. I get the angle you're going from. I get the angle that you're coming from. But, you know, the thing of the matter is, when we are not taking that responsibility to discuss it, to actually openly discuss things, and, you know, black men have feelings too. Shock, horror. You know, a black man bleeds. You know, the fact of the matter is, like I'm saying, suicide is it's more rampant right now in young black men. Look at what happened with Frank Bruno behind the twittering laughters and oh my God, oh look at him, he's supposed to be a hard man. Look at how far he had to fall before anybody took his plight seriously. So the fact, you know, for me, I'm not saying that I'm not agreeing with the stereotypes. I'm not, because as a woman, I have a brother, I have a father, I have cousins, I have nephews, I have male friends. I do not agree with that. So the same way that I should be allowed my emotional expression, I believe men should be given that same avenue.
But see, here's the thing. Who stops men from having that avenue of expression? Ask a man. Ask a man who stops them from having that avenue of expression. Speaking for myself, I can speak for myself, and I can talk about what happens in society. For myself, I take it.
Because you know yourself.
I absolutely take it. And with the greatest of respect to the rest of the world, if they can't handle it, French would say, don't be. Tough luck. But this is how I stay sane.
Yeah,
As far as society is concerned, what society constantly denies is that actually the emotional content of the lives of black men is censored totally from speech.
Tate, I agree with you on the last point. And the fact that you know yourself well enough to take that and say, my expression is mine to have, again speaks to your background, your upbringing, and everything.
Yeah.
And you, my friend, are in a privileged position because the average Black Joe is not in that position. Let's be honest with ourselves. The average Black man is not in that position.
Okay.
And the average Black woman is not in that position to actually support her partner, her son, her father, her friend through those emotional upheavals.
Yeah. You see, whatever hand society or life deals you, those are the cards you can play. You can't invent other cards. So everybody has agency. By agency, I mean everybody has responsibility to live their life the best way they know how. Now, speaking from where I am, I feel the first thing to encourage a person to take that responsibility is to take away the burden of blame, the burden of abuse, and the burden of stereotypes, which, while we're having this discussion, is relentlessly still piled on. I mean, people are living in this environment in which this sort of thing happens. Exactly. And the people who will abuse them deny it without so much as a by your leave. Actually, as far as I'm concerned, it is a form of savagery, which is, I actually don't understand that kind of savagery. And yet those people present themselves as the civilized ones. Now, it's called gaslighting. Do you know what gaslighting is?
Yeah, I've written a couple of blogs on it.
Yeah, gaslighting. It's a form of gaslighting, and gaslighting can really destabilize an individual. However, the person has to take responsibility. And the starting point of taking responsibility, I would say, is conversation.
Okay.
Straight talk.
So, you know what? Let's put a pause in it. Let's put a quick pin in it. Take a moment, take a step back. Let's take a breather, because I think at this point,
other people may have.
There
must be some comments.
We have a couple of comments that have come through, more comments that have come through.
So we're on.
So we have a comment from Waskali who said, listen, all I think depends from the angle of which you're looking at. Educated Black men might look like a threat to their chosen field of study because they tend to question the status quo in others to make it better, which makes them look like a threat. We've seen Blacks doing what was not thought they could do years before. Looking at other angles, the mess. We've also seen some educated ones causing menace to the environment, but most times this is what the society always beams its light on. So we have people coming in, and also let's give a quick shout out to Melissa, who's just listening in, and she listened in to last week, where she goes, I've just finished listening in to this show, and I found it thoroughly enjoyable, entertaining, enlightening, and leaving me with food for thought. One of the many things discussed was whitewashing, and I was wondering why little had been said about Scarlett Johansson's latest role, playing the lead in a film based upon an anime. Thanks for the great show. I'll be giving you a regular listen.
Well, that's nice.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, Melissa, how you doing?
Thanks, Mel.
And since we're segueing here, we might as well do our our so loud moment for the week. You know what? I'm gonna let you do the so loud moment for the week.
Oh my goodness!
Because I just sound petty doing it.
Okay, I'll be petty. Well, Steve Bannon's been removed from the National Security Council.
Can you say that one more time? I don't think they heard you.
You just want to vote.
Yes.
Steve Bannon, President Trump's national strategy advisor, has been removed from the NSC, which is the National Security Council. The National Security Council is the body charged with advising the president on defense and foreign affairs protocols and strategy. It's a very, very powerful position to be in. Now, what's interesting about Mr. Bannon is that he was the founder of this alt-right, far right platform called Breitbart. And he is also very strongly connected to white supremacist groups. So I think it's a huge sigh of relief that a man with those leanings has been taken just even 2 centimeters further away from the foreign policy and the defense strategy of the United States of America. What worries me most about him is this white supremacist bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically, you do not want someone with those kind of policies in any position of real power, because that's when things start to get...
Mind you, he's still the national strategy advisor for Trump.
Don't take my so loud moment away from me.
But this is a significant move. And here's the thing, actually, what the real story is that they didn't announce this in a press briefing. It was in a regulatory filing, which is civil service speak for something that you sneak under the radar.
Someone just kind of sweep it under the carpet and nobody will hear about it.
Well, of course, the moment he did it, it's been on all the airwaves. But so, yeah, I think that's a so loud moment. I think it's a great leap for the United States to come back to some kind of peaceful balance, I would say.
Well, like I said, if I said it, I'll just sound petty. So, so that's a good sellout moment for the week. Now, we're coming back into the show, and I wanted us to take a breather and come back because I wanted to kind of refocus. And the refocus is the idea of an educated Black man a threat or just...
Massive threat.
Or a myth?
Oh, it's a massive threat. I experience it so many times every day. And... in fact, I would say my experience of professional life is that I spend, for every 100 units of emotional and intellectual energy, I spend 70 units on managing my relationships and 30 on the job. Yeah. Because actually, most of the time, I spend my time trying to demonstrate to the people, I mean you no harm.
I come in peace.
I come in peace. I just want to get on with the job. I like the job I'm doing. Let's get on with it. But owing to the fact that most of these people are raised in a culture in which a Black man isn't supposed to deal with them one-on-one, no matter, I mean, I'll say this publicly anywhere, no matter how liberal most seem, of course, there are exceptions. Of course there are exceptions. But basically, most people, most white people, are very worried by an intelligent, articulate, and experienced Black man.
Well, I agree. I agree with that because there's this notion that, we have our lane and our playing field and we need to stay in that. I mean, I remember when Tiger Woods first appeared and people were literally losing their mind. Like, oh, you have basketball and you have American football, you have football or soccer, it's, on one side of the world. So basically, you have all of that. You can't come into our little pond. This is strictly for us. And then when Lewis Hamilton came on the scene, again, it caused great consternations. But, the thing is, I mean, even looking at, there's a young ex NFL player, Myron Rolle, and he's gone from former NFL player to pursuing a career as a neurosurgeon with residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, and is Harvard educated. So I think this idea of the educated black man is a scary notion to certain people, and not just to other races, because this is where I'm coming back. This whole finger pointing, we need to also do some introspective finger pointing. We have to look at where we are not filling the gap.
I mean, I think I know where you're going with this.
Because
there is no doubt that I'm also cautious around other black men, because I may sound too posh, I may look too posh. I hate that word posh. I really hate that word posh.
Well,
whatever. What else we use?
You know why I hate that word posh? Because it's used when within our grouping, somebody goes, "Oh, you sound a bit posh. Are you trying to be white?" Like, no, I'm just educated.
It's got nothing to do with whiteness or Asianness or blackness.
But that's the point. You see, this is the introspection I'm talking about, because we are actually, again, the royal we.
You see, okay, so most of my friends, I would say, most of my friends are like me. And certainly my family is a lot like me. They don't speak like me, maybe, but in the basic attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, we kind of mirror each other. And the fact that it is upsetting for certain black folk is that I can understand it to the extent that people feel, well, look, I could never be like that, which is also untrue, because they actually can. Anybody can be like anybody else.
Of course.
But they need to either to have the opportunity, and secondly, crucially, take the opportunity.
Yes. And, so, we're going back to this, and it's like, there's a point that we have to stop. We have to get to the point to have that discussion and stop having those benign conversations about nothing and saying, well, if somebody does something, the classic one is, if a black man is educated, he's a nerd. Think Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So you have Will Smith, he is the streetwise, all street smarts, but no book smarts. And then you have Carlton, who is the Tom Jones dancing little one. And basically, that is the demarcation. That's the nerd. That's the thug. It's this idea that it's one or the other.
Well, I mean, hooking back to what we talked about in the first part, it's quite easy to have a person internalize what society tells them about themselves. So I'll give you an example. I remember my kids went to a private school, prep school, and whatever it was, one of them was absolutely just, on sports day it was embarrassing, because she kept going up to pick up all the prizes and stuff. After the first couple, it starts to get embarrassing, you start to get self-conscious. And I noticed that, but kids are kids, they take the talent for granted. Sometimes she wouldn't do well at all, and her tutor would come down on her like a ton of bricks. But I noticed that if she didn't perform so well in English or maths, it was much softer. So this said something to me about the tutor's expectation of that child. Now, trust me, I wasn't paying the money for her to come out as a world-beating 100-meter sprinter. If she was good and well, we all have different talents, of course. But it was interesting that even in quite a high-powered educational environment, people had stereotyped expectations. Actually, if she flunked out in the races, I could live with that. But if she flunked out in English, I couldn't afford that.
Well, we've had some comments just come in going, from Nolan going, intelligence is not viewed as an asset to a masculine person of color, especially athletes. That's true, because They're not looking for the brightest cookie in the block. They're just looking for, can you run fast?
Yeah.
Can you throw a ball fast? Can you bounce a ball across a court? And then also going the notion that you can't be athletic and smart, which is where this young man, Myron Roll, is actually stepping out of many stereotypes.
Do you know, actually, it's not true. That this thing about not being physical and having intellectual ability, because the school I went to, we played sports four times. It was a boarding school. We played sports 4 times a week, and your physicality was as important as your intellect. No doubt about that.
Tate.
Yeah.
Tate. I shake my head. Simply because I'm going to go back to the fact that privilege. Yeah. Again, we're talking about privilege.
Yes.
That the privilege education.
No. I don't mention that to kind of project this idea of privilege. I just mention that for my friends and my fellows to understand that is actually what human beings can do.
Yeah, but that's not the point. You know why?
Why?
Because when we think of Black athletes,
yes,
nobody's actually looking at their test scores.
Yeah.
Nobody's actually caring if they can read or write.
Yeah.
Is can they produce?
Well, that goes back.
Essentially, is what they are.
Well, sure, but then it doesn't surprise me either. There was a time when Frank Bruno was the most popular Black man in the whole of the United Kingdom. He was actually held up almost as some kind of stereotype of how Black men should be. Now,
and then compare it to how people vilify his counterpart with the monocle. Help me, I'm not great.
Chris Eubanks.
Yes, the boxer.
Yeah.
The man is articulate. He is well dressed, well spoken, but people consider him an idiot.
Yes, of course they do. Well, again, so this goes back to this idea of people being put in a box into which they don't fit, and the terrible danger that once you're put in this box, you actually start to internalize that, and the only way out is for people to talk with each other and expose these lies. Because the people who are putting you in the box will swear blind they're not doing that. And they will swear blind so convincingly that it's not true. Actually, it's a form of pathology. It's something I don't understand.
So, this is a topic that we cannot exhaust today. We can't do it. I mean, we are 8 minutes till the time. We are 8 minutes.
But I'm curious to hear what people think, because, you've been the best devil's advocate. And my goodness, Darcus Howe, talking about devil's advocates. Darcus Howe, bless him, passed on.
Yes.
Yeah. He was a great social activist. And of course, he had that series on television called The Devil's Advocate. So a quick R.I.P. for Darcus, a man that I have a lot of respect for. And he was a very engaging, I knew Darcus a little bit. He was a very engaging man as well. But you played Devil's Advocate very well, and I think it's really important. It's really important.
We need to have these conversations. We need to have these conversations where we are inspecting how we show up, inspecting what stereotypes are we carrying around.
Can I without excuse me, Will, just a thought came to my mind. Like, for example, I'm in the communications biz. If you go into PR, there are days when you can, like you're working on a project or something and it's completely dressed down. It's kind of jeans and flip-flops, if you like, and so on. But client-facing stuff, you need to dress like an executive.
Of course.
Now, I've had Black interns, okay, and I've been keen to try and support them. They didn't know the difference between dressing like going to a discotheque, to a club, and dressing like you were going to an office.
Now we're going to come back to stereotypes. We're going to come back to who have they been exposed to. we're going to come back to what
Okay.
kind of, socialization.
So these are the sorts of conversations we need to have. Now, can you imagine me trying to explain to some of these guys, there's a difference. By the way, here's a funny thing. They were the most extraordinary bits of eye candy. All the women used to see them and swoon and fall at their feet and so on and so forth. Now, they would have been good for that. That would have been very successful for them.
Oh, yeah, the fetish, of course, the black man fetish.
And they were pretty guys.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't going to go anywhere professionally. Put it this way, and one day I had to say to one of these guys, listen, yeah, look, you're a really good-looking guy. If I had a quarter of your looks, okay, I'd be a lot further along in my life than I am now. However, you need to know how to show up. You need to know how to present. It's got nothing to do with accent, but it has to do with soft skills like style. And see, these are things which closed networks don't enable people to get, and people have to be open to learning.
And you were absent last week when we were talking about building our own network, and we were talking about if they're not letting you into the room, make your own. You were missing from that, weren't you?
Yeah. I had another event. But this is, in fact, the solution to a lot of these problems mean that if you keep knocking on a door and the door refuses to open, you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, segue somewhere else. But
and absolutely create your own.
Yeah. So we have some more comments coming through. So one of it goes, the box starts in primary school. It continues through to university. Who does one talk to in the younger years? That's a very good question and a very valid question. In fact, we should get other people to contribute to that question. Hit us up via our, oh my God, my brain just died, via Instagram and Twitter on our hashtags, Shine Out Loud Show.
Absolutely.
Let us know what your thoughts are on the show tonight.
Sure.
Also, it goes, how does one get the kids to understand dreams of being an engineer are as masculine as being a basketball player, knowing math, knowing how to react and write. How to read and write. Sorry, I can't read this evening because clearly how to read and write is as important as displaying athletic prowess. But who has these conversations with them growing up? And this comes back to...
That's Norman Bonner. Norman, thank you so much. I mean, these questions cut right to the heart of the matter. Personally, I talk with kids all the time, and I try and engage with them. Mm-hmm. For some, I'm too old. For some, I'm not cool enough, and so on and so forth. But whenever I get the opportunity, mm-hmm. I try and engage the kids in even the slightest thing that's going to point them in a certain direction. Of course, I don't live with them every day, and they're going to go back to where they've come. But there's an example.
That is the key. So if they are surrounded by people who've been damaged by these stereotyping, if they're surrounded by people who believe the narrow confines of what makes masculinity, what makes a man, what makes a good black man or a man of color, your conversation with them will not amount to hella beans. Because what they know is what they know. If what they know is that a man, will go out and become a track star or football star or, reading is not cool.
Do you know, sorry, without...
Go ahead.
Have you landed?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that my experience teaches me is that the best way of teaching anybody anything is to live it. And I don't accept not to have traction with people on anything other than a one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And I will tend to disengage if a person demonstrates that you see, some people lack the imagination certainly in a white society, some people lack the imagination that it's even possible to deal one-on-one with a person over whom you traditionally have privilege. I see it in women all the time. I see it in men all the time. So as long as people of colour are shooting themselves in the foot, they're more than welcome. People will be so nice. And that is one of the other things that we have to be so careful about, because people are actually rewarded for doing bad things.
Okay, and I think on that note, we have to end it here tonight because it's that time already. So you know what? Join us next week because we are going to have our first power couple on the show. We're having a couple, Nat Nay and Stella Belgam,
Sure.
and they are poets, they are documentarians, they are artists, and they're joining us together. So we're having our first couple.
Yeah, that'd be exciting.
Yes.
But also, can I just say that if anybody has any comments or observations, tweet me. I'm at Tet Kofi, TETKOFI, because together with it at Shine Out Show, let's keep the conversation going because your input is absolutely fabulous.
Definitely, we want to hear more from you. We want to know what you thought about tonight's show. You know, follow us, tweet us, drop us a message. In fact, drop us an email at letstalk@shineoutloudshow. I mean, go onto our website. Let's know what you thought.
Facebook, everyone.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. You can find us on our Facebook page. You can find us on Shine Out Loud, which is Shine Out Loud Show on Instagram and Twitter. And if you go to www.shineoutloud.tv and listen to the replays of our old show and drop us an email, reach out to us there because we want to hear what you think.
You're such a devil's advocate. God, I'm just thinking back. I'm just thinking back over tonight. And thank you for asking me the question. Nobody ever asked me that question anyway. Let me tell you, not on air. Nobody ever asked me that question.
Wow.
So yeah, hey.
Okay.
It is what it is.
So looking forward to have you joining us next week, and I will be able to speak next week because somehow this conversation has me all riled up that I can't get my words out together. But I am so glad that you guys stayed with us for a whole hour. It's been incredible. Thank you and good night.
You've been listening to the Shine Out Loud Show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Shine Out Show.